Okay, just imagine this for a second. A dictatorship that's been in power for 20 years, one of the most powerful in Asia, and it's brought to its knees in just 4 days. And not by some invading army, but by millions of regular people. You know what their weapons were? Faith, flowers, and the radio. It's an absolutely incredible story, so let's dive into the 1986 People Power Revolution in the Philippines.
This quote right here really gets to the heart of it all. It came from one of the key military guys who broke away from the regime. And what he's saying is, look, this wasn't some backroom deal, not a military takeover. This was a real, spontaneous uprising of everyday folks who just decided they were done. It was the moment they realized the power was in their hands all along. So, how did things get so bad? You know, to really get why this revolution happened, we have to go back and look at the 2 decades under Ferdinand Marcos that pushed the entire nation right to the edge. So let's just quickly walk through this. It all kicks off in 1972 when Marcos declares martial law and basically grabs all the power for himself. That starts this really dark period of media blackouts and just brutal military repression. But the real turning point, the spark that lit the fuse, was in 1983 with the assassination of the main opposition leader, Benigno Aquino. By 1985, the whole country was basically a powder keg, just waiting for a match.
And what's wild is how everything was falling apart at once. It wasn't just one problem. The economy was in an absolute freefall. Human rights abuses were happening all the time, systematically. And the corruption? I mean, some people estimated that about 10% of the entire country's yearly income was just being stolen. And maybe most importantly, the media was silenced. This era of guided media meant there was no official way for people to find out what was really going on.
And that match I was talking about, it came in the form of an election. Marcos decided to call a snap election, way earlier than scheduled, thinking it would make his rule look legitimate. Well, that little gamble backfired, big time. It ended up exposing just how rotten his regime was for the whole world to see. You gotta understand, this was a huge gamble. Marcos thought he could control the outcome, just like he always had. He desperately needed to project this image of popular support, not just to his own people, but to his allies, especially the United States. But this time was different. This time, everybody was watching. And the whole thing was rigged from the start. They shortened the campaign period to hurt the opposition. The election commission was totally in the bag for Marcos, and they messed with voter registration. The regime thought they had it locked down. But here's what they didn't count on. 35 of the commission's own computer technicians walking out live on TV to protest the cheating. That was it. That was the final straw. The fraud was out in the open for everyone to see.
So after this stolen election, a group of reform-minded military officers planned a coup, but their plot got discovered. They ended up trapped in a military camp, expecting the absolute worst. What happened next, though, turned what could have been a military bloodbath into a peaceful revolution.
This was the call. With these rebel soldiers totally trapped and about to be wiped out, the Archbishop of Manila, Cardinal Jaime Sin, got on the airwaves of the Catholic radio station, Radio Veritas. He didn't ask for violence. He asked people to pray and to physically go to the main highway, EDSA, to protect the soldiers with their bodies. And you know what? The people answered. In just a matter of hours, and over the next 4 days, over 2 million unarmed civilians answered that call. They just poured onto the main highway in Metro Manila and formed this massive human barricade. The sheer scale of it, it's just breathtaking.
And look at this contrast, it's incredible. On one side, you've got the full might of the state, tanks, guns, propaganda, and orders to attack. And on the other side, the people showed up with radios to stay connected, rosaries to pray, flowers to give to the soldiers, and food to share with each other. I mean, if you want a definition of people power, this is it.
But you have to wonder, how do you coordinate 2 million people? Well, it wouldn't have been possible without one piece of technology, the radio. See, with all the official news controlled by the state, the airwaves became the absolute lifeline of the revolution. And what unfolded was this dramatic battle for the airwaves. First, Radio Veritas was like the revolution's umbilical cord, keeping everyone connected and mobilized. Marcos knew this, so he sent his forces to attack and destroy their transmitter. But right at the moment when it seemed like the voice of the people would be silenced, this small team, led by a broadcaster named June Keithley, took over another station. They started broadcasting in secret as Radio Bandido, Bandit Radio, and kept the revolution alive. I mean, just think about how insane and unprecedented this is. General Fidel Ramos, one of the rebellion's leaders, later said that a civilian broadcaster was the field marshal of the revolution. It was the first time in military history that orders for troop movements were being sent out not through military channels, but over a secret public radio station run by a couple of incredibly brave civilians. It was literally the voice of the revolution.
And in the end, the tanks never fired. The soldiers refused to shoot their own people. People power had won. So let's take a look at the incredible legacy this peaceful uprising left behind, not just for the Philippines, but for the entire world.
After 4 of the most tense days imaginable, it was over. The Marcos family fled the country. 20 years of authoritarian rule came to an end. The nonviolent revolution worked, and democracy was restored to the Philippines.
And the impact of EDSA just echoed across the globe. It became this powerful new model, a real-world demonstration that peaceful, popular resistance could actually topple a dictator. It directly inspired pro-democracy movements everywhere, from South Korea and Chile to the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia and Poland's Singing Revolution. It was a true beacon of hope.
But, the story doesn't just end there with a neat little bow. Like any massive historical event, the legacy of EDSA is complicated, and it's still being debated today. And that leads to a pretty crucial question about what it all really accomplished.
Yeah, more than 3 decades later, while everyone agrees the revolution got rid of a dictator, many feel it never really fixed the deep-rooted problems, the poverty, the inequality, the corruption that allowed a dictator to take power in the first place. And because of that, many now call EDSA an unfinished revolution.
And that kind of leaves us with this big question to think about. What does it actually mean for a people's revolution to be unfinished? Does it mean it was a failure? Or maybe, does it just suggest that the work of building and protecting a real democracy is never actually finished? It's a powerful thought that getting rid of a dictator is only step 1.
So, if you found this explainer helpful, inspiring, entertaining, and informative, please go ahead and share, like, and subscribe. And watch for the next upload. Thank you.